Woman rescues dying kitten from landfill. What she does next leaves everyone in tears. Sarah Chun wasn't supposed to be at the Cedar Grove landfill that rainy October morning. As the town's newest veterinary technician, her usual Thursday routine involved inventory at the clinic. But a missed turn and a GPS rerouting had brought her past the sprawling waste facility on the outskirts of their small Pennsylvania town. That's when she heard it, barely audible above the drizzle hitting her windshield. A cry so faint she thought she'd imagined it. Sarah pulled her old Honda Civic to the shoulder, ignoring the mud splashing onto her scrubs. The cry came again, desperate and weak. Following the sound, she picked her way carefully through the puddles toward the landfill's chain-link fence. "Hello?" she called out, feeling slightly foolish. The rain had plastered her dark hair to her face, and her shoes were already soaked through. "Is someone there?" The answering cry was weaker this time, but closer. Sarah pulled out her phone's flashlight, scanning the area. There, in a waterlogged cardboard box barely holding together, she spotted movement. Her heart stopped. A tiny kitten, no more than a few weeks old, lay trembling in the sodden box. Its gray fur was matted and filthy, its eyes crusted shut. Sarah had seen plenty of sick animals in her 3 years as a vet tech, but this was different. "Oh God," she whispered, already shrugging off her jacket. Without hesitation, she began climbing the fence. "Hey, you can't be in there." A security guard's voice boomed from the facility's entrance. "There's a kitten," Sarah called back, already dropping down the other side. "Please, I'm a vet tech. I need to help it." The guard, an older man named Bill according to his nameplate, hurried over with an umbrella. His stern expression softened when he saw the box. "Jesus," he muttered. "Who would do something like this?" Together, they carefully lifted the box. The kitten didn't even struggle as Sarah wrapped it in her jacket, cradling it against her chest. Its breathing was shallow, its tiny body cold despite the humid air. "The nearest emergency vet is in Harrisburg," Sarah said, more to herself than Bill. "That's 40 minutes away." "Take it to Doc Mason," Bill suggested, walking her back to her car. "He's semi-retired, but his clinic's just 5 minutes from here. Man's got a soft spot for hard cases." Sarah had heard of James Mason. Most people in Cedar Grove had. He'd been the town's primary veterinarian for over 3 decades before scaling back 2 years ago. Now he mainly handled routine care for longtime clients. "Will he see us without an appointment?" Bill was already pulling out his phone. "My dog Rusty's been his patient for 12 years. Let me call him." The next few minutes were a blur of activity. Bill's call, the careful drive through the rain, the kitten's increasingly faint breaths against her chest. Sarah kept talking, her voice trembling. "Hold on, little one. Just hold on." Dr. Mason was waiting at the door of his modest clinic, a weathered building with faded blue trim. He was shorter than Sarah expected, with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Bill called ahead," he said, already leading her to an exam room. "Let's see what we've got." The examination revealed the full extent of the kitten's condition. Severe malnutrition, respiratory infection, flea infestation, and possible internal parasites. Its temperature was dangerously low, and one of its back legs showed signs of previous trauma. "Most would say humanely euthanizing would be kindest," Dr. Mason said quietly, watching Sarah's face. "The recovery, if possible, will be long and difficult." Sarah looked at the tiny creature on the exam table, barely clinging to life. In her mind, she saw that rain-soaked box, heard that desperate cry that had brought her there. "I'll take responsibility," she said firmly. "Whatever it costs, whatever it takes. This kitten fought to be heard. I won't give up on it now." Dr. Mason's face broke into a warm smile. "I was hoping you'd say that. Well then, let's get started. First order of business, does our fighter have a name?" Sarah gently stroked the kitten's head with one finger, feeling its faint purr. "Hope," she said softly. "Her name is Hope." The next 72 hours tested everything Sarah knew about veterinary medicine. Dr. Mason converted his back office into a makeshift intensive care unit, complete with a heated incubator borrowed from a retired colleague. "She's going to need round-the-clock care," he explained, showing Sarah how to tube feed the tiny kitten. "Every 2 hours, like clockwork. Think you're up for it?" Sarah nodded, already calculating how to manage this with her regular job at the clinic across town. "I'll make it work." Her boss at Cedar Grove Veterinary Clinic, Dr. Thompson, was understanding when Sarah called to explain. "Take the week," he said. "We'll cover your shifts. Just keep us updated." Those first nights blurred together in a haze of feeding schedules, medication times, and constant monitoring. Sarah slept on a cot next to Hope's incubator, jerking awake at the smallest sound. Dr. Mason would find her there each morning when he arrived, usually with coffee and bagels in hand. "You remind me of my daughter," he said on the third morning, watching Sarah clean Hope's crusted eyes with gentle precision. "She's a wildlife vet in Oregon now. Has the same look you do when she's determined to save something." Slowly, Hope began to show signs of improvement. Her breathing eased, her temperature stabilized, and by the fourth day, she could open one eye. The first time she managed to lift her head and let out a tiny mew. Sarah burst into tears. "That's our girl," Dr. Mason said, pretending not to notice Sarah wiping her eyes. "She's a fighter, this one." Word about Hope spread quickly in their small town. Bill, the security guard, stopped by daily with his wife Linda, who brought homemade casseroles and insisted Sarah needed to eat properly. The local pet store owner, Martha Williams, donated premium kitten formula and supplies. "The community here has always had a big heart," Dr. Mason explained, "especially for the underdogs, or undercats in this case." By the end of the first week, Hope had gained enough strength to take her first wobbly steps. Her back leg was weak, but Dr. Mason was optimistic about physical therapy. The transformation was remarkable. Her gray fur, though still thin in places, had a healthy sheen, and her eyes, now fully open, revealed a striking shade of amber. "She's not out of the woods yet," Dr. Mason cautioned, "but I haven't seen this kind of recovery in 40 years of practice." Sarah documented everything: the medications, the feeding schedules, Hope's progress. She started a small blog, mostly to keep interested community members updated. To her surprise, it quickly gathered followers from beyond Cedar Grove. One evening, as Sarah was preparing Hope's last feeding of the day, she received an unexpected visitor. Karen Matthews, a reporter from the local newspaper, had heard about Hope's story. "People need to hear about this," Karen insisted, watching Hope attempt to chase a small ball of paper. "Not just the rescue, but what it says about our community, about not giving up." Sarah hesitated. "I'm not looking for attention. I just did what anyone would do." Dr. Mason, who had stayed late to review Hope's latest blood work, shook his head. Not anyone would have stopped Sarah. Not anyone would have climbed that fence or committed to these weeks of care. The story matters. As if to emphasize his point, Hope wobbled over to Sarah, purring loudly despite her still fragile state. She had recently started following Sarah everywhere, crying whenever her rescuer was out of sight. Besides, Karen added, snapping a photo of Hope nuzzling Sarah's hand, "There's something bigger happening here. People are asking about other animals at the landfill. The mayor's office is getting calls about starting a trap-neuter return program. Your little Hope is inspiring change." Sarah looked down at the kitten who had fought so hard to live, who had brought together strangers in ways she never expected. Maybe this was about more than just one rescue. Maybe Hope's story could help prevent other animals from ending up in rain-soaked boxes, fighting for survival. "Okay," she agreed finally. "Let's tell the story. But make sure people understand, this isn't about me. It's about what we can all do when we choose not to look away." Karen's article in the Cedar Grove Gazette, titled "Hope Found, the Kitten That United a Town," hit the front page on a Sunday morning. By Monday, Sarah's blog had crashed from too many visitors, and her phone wouldn't stop ringing. "I've got 3 more kittens behind the supermarket," one caller reported. "There's a wounded dog living under the Anderson Bridge," said another. Each call represented another animal in need. Another cry for help that people had previously ignored or hadn't known how to address. Dr. Mason found Sarah in his office, surrounded by sticky notes covered with addresses and phone numbers. Hope sat in her lap, now strong enough to groom herself, watching her human with concerned eyes. "You can't save them all yourself," he said gently. "I know," Sarah replied, running a hand through her disheveled hair. "But I can't ignore them either. Not after Hope." That afternoon, they held an impromptu meeting in Dr. Mason's waiting room. Martha from the pet store came, along with Bill and Linda from the landfill, Karen from the newspaper, and several others who had followed Hope's story. Even Dr. Thompson from Sarah's regular clinic showed up. "We need a system," Sarah explained, while Hope supervised from her new cat tree in the corner. "A network of foster homes, volunteers, a way to coordinate resources." To her surprise, hands went up immediately. Martha offered to provide supplies at cost. Bill and Linda volunteered to foster. Dr. Thompson pledged support from his clinic for medical care. Karen promised ongoing coverage in the Gazette to keep the community engaged. "What do we call ourselves?" Linda asked, already making lists of needed items. Sarah glanced at Hope, who had fallen asleep in her favorite position, front paws crossed like a proper lady. "How about Hope's Haven?" Within weeks, Hope's Haven took shape. Sarah's blog became a website where people could report animals in need, volunteer, or donate. The mayor's office, impressed by the community initiative, fast-tracked approval for a trap-neuter return program for feral cats. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Some residents complained about resources being wasted on strays. Others questioned the need for another animal welfare organization. The workload was overwhelming, and Sarah often found herself exhausted, trying to balance her regular job with the growing demands of Hope's Haven. One particularly challenging day, after dealing with a hoarding situation that resulted in 15 rescued cats, Sarah sat in Dr. Mason's office fighting tears of frustration. "I don't know if I can do this," she admitted. Hope, now fully recovered and appointed as the clinic's unofficial therapy cat, immediately jumped into her lap. "There's so much need, so many animals." Dr. Mason sat down beside her. "Remember when Hope first came in? When everyone said it would be kinder to let her go?" Sarah nodded, scratching Hope's favorite spot under her chin. "But you saw something else," he continued. "You saw possibility. That's what you're giving these animals now. Not just care, but possibility. And you're not doing it alone anymore." He was right. That evening, Sarah watched as volunteers transformed his clinic's basement into a temporary shelter space. Martha's teenage daughter was setting up donated cages while teaching other kids how to socialize shy cats. Bill had recruited his retired firefighter friends to build outdoor shelters for feral colonies. Linda was organizing a fundraising bake sale. "It's amazing what a community can do when they come together," Karen observed, taking photos for her next article. "And to think it all started because you took a wrong turn." Sarah smiled, watching Hope confidently approach one of the scared new rescues, demonstrating the gentle, patient way she had of helping other animals feel safe. "I don't think it was a wrong turn at all," she said quietly. "I think it was exactly where I was meant to be." As winter approached Cedar Grove, Hope's Haven faced its first major crisis. A developer's plans to demolish an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town threatened a large colony of feral cats that had made it their home. Among them were several pregnant females and elderly cats that had lived there for years. "They're giving us 2 weeks to clear the area," Sarah explained during an emergency meeting at Dr. Mason's clinic. Hope sat at attention on her special perch, as if understanding the gravity of the situation. "After that, demolition begins." 2 weeks to relocate 30-plus cats? Martha shook her head. "That's impossible." The situation was complicated by the approaching snowstorm. Temperatures were dropping, and the nearest available shelters were already overcrowded. Sarah had been up for 3 nights straight, trying to figure out a solution. "Maybe it's time to think bigger," Dr. Mason suggested. He pulled out a folder he'd been keeping in his desk. Remember that old Johnson property on Maple Street? The one with the barn? Sarah knew it well, a defunct small farm sitting on 2 acres, just outside town limits. It had been on the market for months, its price dropping steadily as it fell into disrepair. "We can't afford that," she protested. But Dr. Mason was already smiling. "Remember those media interviews you've been avoiding? The ones from the state news stations?" He spread out several papers on the table. "While you were busy saving animals, your story, Hope's story, went viral. People have been trying to donate from all over the country." Karen pulled up the Hope's Haven website on her laptop. "He's right, Sarah. Look at this." The donation page showed numbers that made Sarah's head spin. Hope's story had touched hearts far beyond their small town. People from as far away as California and Maine had been trying to contribute to their cause. "With these funds, plus a small business loan, we could convert the property into a proper animal sanctuary," Dr. Mason explained. "The barn could house the feral colony, and the house could become our permanent headquarters." The next 2 weeks became a blur of activity. While volunteers worked to safely trap and temporarily house the warehouse cats, Sarah found herself navigating property negotiations, zoning requirements, and renovation plans. Hope accompanied her to every meeting, her presence somehow making even the most skeptical officials soften. "There's something about that cat," the bank manager remarked after approving their loan. "Like she knows exactly what's at stake." The property purchase went through just days before the demolition was scheduled to begin. The timing of the renovation would be tight, but the community rallied once again. Local contractors offered discounted services. A home improvement store donated building materials. High school students volunteered to paint and clean. On the day they began moving the cats to their new home, the first snowflakes started falling. Sarah stood in the converted barn, watching as the formerly homeless felines explored their heated living spaces, complete with climbing structures and cozy beds. "Look at this," Linda whispered, pointing to Hope. The little gray cat who had once been close to death was now confidently leading a frightened elderly cat around the barn, showing him the food stations and comfortable resting spots. Other cats followed them, as if understanding that Hope had once been where they were. "She's teaching them it's safe," Dr. Mason observed, "just like we taught her." That evening, as the snow fell harder outside, Sarah sat in what would become Hope's Haven's main office, a sunny room in the farmhouse overlooking both the barn and a planned outdoor enclosure. Hope lay curled in her lap, purring contentedly. "I never thought finding you would lead to all this," Sarah told her, gesturing at the renovation plans spread across the desk. "You changed everything, little one." A knock at the door revealed Karen, camera in hand as usual. "Sorry to interrupt, but you might want to see this." She pulled up a national news website on her phone. There, featured prominently, was a story about Hope's Haven. The headline read, "From Landfill to Landmark: How One Kitten Inspired a Community to Reimagine Animal Rescue." "They want to do a feature story," Karen explained. "Not just about Hope, but about how this model of community-based animal welfare could work in other towns." Sarah looked down at Hope, who met her gaze with those wise amber eyes. From nearly dying in a rain-soaked box to inspiring a movement, it seemed impossible, yet here they were. "What do you think, Hope? Ready to share our story with the world?" Hope's answer was a gentle headbutt and a purr that seemed to say, "We're just getting started." The national media feature changed everything. As winter melted into spring, Hope's Haven became a model for community-based animal rescue across the country. Sarah found herself hosting visitors from other towns, conducting virtual workshops, and sharing their operational methods with emerging organizations. Hope, now a healthy and confident adult cat, seemed to understand her role perfectly. During tours of the sanctuary, she would appear at just the right moments, demonstrating to visitors how even the most traumatized animals could heal with patience and love. "It's like she knows exactly what each animal needs," remarked Dr. Rachel Martinez, a visiting veterinarian from California. They watched as Hope gently encouraged a newly rescued dog, a terrified shepherd mix found abandoned on the highway, to take his first steps into the outdoor play area. She was there herself, Sarah explained, remembering those critical first days. Sometimes I think that's what makes the difference. When help comes from someone who truly understands. The sanctuary had grown beyond anyone's expectations. The original barn now housed not only the relocated feral colony, but also served as a rehabilitation center for injured strays. The farmhouse had been transformed into a comprehensive animal welfare center, complete with a medical suite, where Dr. Mason now worked part-time, education rooms, and offices for their growing staff. But it was their community programs that truly set Hope's Haven apart. Local schools regularly brought students for educational visits. Senior citizens participated in a Golden Friends program, spending time with older animals who needed extra attention. Troubled teens found purpose helping with sanctuary maintenance and animal care. "You've created something extraordinary here," Dr. Thompson told Sarah one afternoon. He had just finished examining a recent rescue, a pregnant cat found in an abandoned car. "This is more than just an animal sanctuary. It's become a place of healing for people too." Sarah knew he was right. She thought of Bill's wife Linda, who had found new purpose coordinating their volunteer program after retiring from teaching. Of Martha's daughter Jenny, once struggling with anxiety, now confidently leading tours and training new volunteers. Of countless others whose lives had been touched by their work. One particularly meaningful moment came when they received an unexpected visitor. The security guard from another landfill 50 miles away. "I read about Hope," he said, shifting nervously in the sanctuary's reception area. "Yesterday, I found a box." He opened his jacket to reveal a tiny kitten, no more than a few weeks old. Without hesitation, Sarah's team sprang into action. As they worked to stabilize the new arrival, she noticed Hope sitting nearby, watching intently. Later, just as she had done countless times before, Hope would help guide this new survivor toward recovery. The security guard stayed to fill out paperwork, but paused mid-form. "I almost didn't stop to check," he admitted. "But then I remembered reading about how Hope's cry made you turn around that day. It made me realize, sometimes the smallest voice can lead to the biggest changes." That evening, after the day's tasks were complete, Sarah sat on the sanctuary's front porch with Hope in her lap. The spring air was warm, carrying the sounds of contented animals and the soft chatter of evening volunteers. "Dr. Mason's retiring next month," she told Hope, scratching behind her ears. "He says it's time to hand over the reins completely." The old veterinarian had been gradually reducing his hours, training new staff while ensuring the sanctuary's medical protocols were firmly established. Hope purred in response, kneading Sarah's leg gently. "You know what he told me today? He said that sometimes the best teachers are the ones who never intended to teach at all. They just live their truth so completely that others can't help but learn from them." Sarah looked out over the sanctuary grounds, at the barn where dozens of cats now lived safely, at the newly constructed dog runs where formerly abandoned animals played happily, at the education center where tomorrow's animal advocates were being inspired. "Is that what you've been doing all along, Hope? Teaching us about resilience, about second chances, about the power of community?" 5 years to the day after Sarah found Hope in that rain-soaked box, the Cedar Grove Gazette ran another front-page story. This time, it celebrated Hope's Haven's newest initiative, the Hope Mobile, a fully equipped veterinary clinic on wheels, designed to serve rural communities and areas without access to animal care. "It seems fitting," Sarah told Karen during the interview, while Hope supervised from her favorite windowsill. "Everything started because I took a wrong turn on a rural road. Now we're intentionally going down those roads, looking for animals who need help." The sanctuary had grown into something none of them had imagined possible. What began as a small rescue operation now employed 15 full-time staff members and coordinated with hundreds of volunteers. They had partnerships with veterinary schools, ran internship programs, and had even started a scholarship fund for students pursuing careers in animal welfare. But perhaps most meaningful was how the Hope effect, as people had started calling it, had spread beyond their original mission. Other communities began developing their own versions of Hope's Haven, each adapted to their local needs but all built on the same foundation of community involvement and compassion. One autumn morning, as Sarah was preparing for the Hope Mobile's first official run, she received a call from Bill at the landfill. "You need to come see this," he said, his voice thick with emotion. When Sarah arrived, she found a small bronze plaque being installed at the landfill entrance. It read, "Site of Hope's Beginning, where one small voice changed many lives." Below was an engraved image of a tiny kitten and a simple message: "Listen carefully. Compassion starts with stopping to hear the smallest cry." The city council approved it unanimously, Bill explained. They said it's to remind people that every act of kindness matters. That evening, Sarah had a special visitor at the sanctuary, Dr. Mason, who, despite being officially retired, still stopped by regularly to check on their progress. He found her in the medical suite, treating a newly rescued cat while Hope watched from her designated supervision spot on the counter. "Remember when you thought you couldn't handle all this?" he asked, gesturing at the bustling sanctuary around them. Sarah smiled, thinking of that overwhelmed young vet tech who had climbed a fence in the rain. "I couldn't have, not alone. But that's the whole point, isn't it? None of us has to do it alone." As if to emphasize this, Hope jumped down and padded over to the new rescue, beginning her gentle ritual of comfort and encouragement. They watched as the nervous cat gradually relaxed under Hope's patient attention. "You know, Dr. Mason said thoughtfully, "in 40 years of veterinary practice, I've learned that healing rarely happens in isolation. It happens in community, human and animal alike." Later that night, after the day's work was done and the sanctuary had quieted, Sarah took Hope for their usual evening walk around the property. They stopped at their favorite spot, a small garden dedicated to the animals they couldn't save, where hope bloomed in the form of wildflowers and memorial stones. "We've come a long way, little one," Sarah murmured, as Hope rubbed against her legs. "But sometimes I think we're still doing exactly what we did that first day, just stopping to listen, and then doing what needs to be done." A soft meow from the nearby bushes caught their attention. Hope's ears perked up, and Sarah reached for her flashlight. As they investigated together, rescuer and rescued, now partners in helping others, Sarah realized that their story hadn't really ended at all. It lived on in every animal they saved, every volunteer they inspired, every community they helped transform. It continued in the countless small moments of kindness that rippled outward from that one rainy morning at a landfill. And Hope, the tiny kitten who had fought so hard to be heard, had become more than just a sanctuary mascot. She was a living reminder that sometimes the greatest changes start with the smallest choices, the choice to stop, to listen, to care, to act. As they headed back inside, another rescue vehicle pulled up to the sanctuary. Sarah saw Hope straighten, ready to meet whoever needed them next. Together, they walked toward the entrance, ready to begin another story of hope.